What's up? Happy Monday. We're gonna have a chill gaming stream today. I'm pretty wiped, so no programming. Tomorrow, though, plenty of programming. Hi, how's it going? So, yeah, I got that controller acting up, so let me just debug that. Put on some music. 1 second. Any luck with that? Guess we'll find out. How do I select without pausing? Nope, that's not it. Alright, do we have the ability to use the controller properly? Yes, we do. Alright, let's do it. Let's do this. Oh yeah, another consideration is the delay working correctly? Oh yeah, so we're at the Halate tree. Can I use the horse? That'd be kind of cool if I could. No, I cannot. So how am I going to find out if the... Oh, right. Gotta put that on. Looks like the delay is a little bit incorrect. 4,000 milliseconds. Yep, that's right. Just toggle that off and back on. Wish I didn't have to do this every time. But it's not completely incorrect. Oh, no, I am getting... Wait. Getting hit by this guy. What is he doing? What is he doing? He's blowing bubbles at me. Here we go. It's hard to hit when he's down there. Okay, it seems like the audio is too delayed, so I'm actually just going to take it down a little bit manually. Let's go with 3,800. Alright. So these guys were in the capital. Wonder why they're here too. Nice. Did that fix it? I love this location. It's gorgeous. Still too delayed. Bring it down another couple hundred of milliseconds. So there's the consecrated snowfield and such. Actually, no, that's not the consecrated snowfield. That's The mountaintop? What's it called? What is that location called? Castle Soul. I don't know. I guess it's the mountaintop. I thought this was the mountaintop. This is like the frozen lake and such. No. There's some cool settlements down there. Alright, let's do another audio test. I'm gonna attack him in 3, 2, there we go. Find out if that worked. That's pretty damn close. I'm just gonna increase it by like 80 milliseconds. Let's see if that's correct. Nice. All right. So what's the plan here? We spawned over there on the sort of western edge, and then you can see to the south the consecrated snowfield and the mountaintops of the giants. That looks like... yeah, there it is. That's the settlement. Wait, is that Castle Soul? What is that? What am I looking at? Yeah, that's the liturgical town, I think. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. Can I jump down there? Oh yeah, it's totally accessible. This is cool. Nope, can't get up there. Reminds me of the branches of the Erd tree in Leyndell, the royal capital. This game is just stellar map design and level design, just top notch. Oh, here's a big boy over there. Oh yeah. I would like to be able to hear what's happening. Currently cannot hear. Bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. I just died to bubbles. That's embarrassing. Honestly, extremely embarrassing. Nice. Now I should be able to hear. I'm using 2 different pairs of headphones at the same time. I'm using earbuds to hear the streaming computer, and I'm using a gaming headset to hear the gaming computer. Dual PC setup. Love it. Ooh, a rare item. A sacramental bud. Feel like I have enough of those. Maybe I shouldn't have ground so much, you know? Grinding, leveling. Makes the game less fun. But I just like seeing the numbers go up. I'm pretty susceptible to that. Seeing the numbers go up. Alright, so the uppermost branch is that one. You drop down and there's the sacramental bud. Then you're on this sort of main branch. These guys are easy when you empower the weapon. There's a horn. Cut the horn. Already had the horn, but you know, always nice to have more. There's more branches down there. Okay, there's the bastard that killed me. Just keep attacking. Don't stop attacking. That's how you do it. That should do it. Oh, get the runes. Alright. So, usually when we play Elden Ring, we watch Adam Ragusia's podcast. He said he was going to skip this week, or he might skip this week, because, you know, he hasn't been feeling very well. But he came out with one, and it's about Ukraine, which is kind of out of his wheelhouse. What is going on? I'm getting shot with bubbles from really far away. Those are some sniper bubbles. Sniper boobles. Those hurt. They're actually kind of a challenge. That's fun. The ones in Oh my gosh. They're hard to defend against, because, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, oh my gosh. Alright, I'm just gonna speed through it on instinct. Yeah, we got this. Nice shot. Oh yeah, so Adam's podcast this week was about Ukraine. He's interviewing someone from there. Oh, flowers. That makes sense. They don't look like the ones I'm used to. Oh, okay. I thought that was an invader. I'm still getting shot. So there's envoys, like sniper envoys, and there are, big envoys, and there are flowers, and there are ants. How do I get up there? Do I have to jump? I do have to jump. So I think we're going to listen to Adam's podcast after I get a little bit more comfortable with this area. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to drop down. I'm going to drop down to that item down there. Can I do that? Is that legal? Nice. Oh, he's a big boy. I'm about to die. Oh my gosh, they go right through your shield. They're magical. They look really cool. They did a good job on the shaders for them. Alright, let's turn on that podcast. Let's watch Adam Mercosia's podcast.
Hello, beautiful community.
There we go. Oh, hello, Adam. You're beautiful. All right. And love the wrong one. Where is... There we go. Sorry about that.
It's the Adam Ragusa. Hello, beautiful community. It's the Adam Ragusa podcast, episode 78, and I am joined by one of my favorite YouTubers, Vlad Vexler, professional philosopher. Political philosophy is your specialty, is that right, Vlad?
Yep.
And you're a public intellectual about town, right?
A baby public intellectual.
Well, it's better than a wannabe public intellectual, which is what I am. But you are of Ukrainian background originally, right? Ethnically Ukrainian, raised in Russia, no?
I'm probably more ethnically Ukrainian than Russian, but I'm originally from Moscow, from the Soviet Union. So if I'm either, I'm Russian.
Got it, okay. And then educated and in the West, and you've been in the West for how long now?
Since the 80s.
Okay.
So that means that I lived in the Soviet Union, but I actually never lived in Russia.
Wow. That's incredible. And are you in the UK presently?
I have been for 30 years on and off on this island. Yes.
Stranded. Luckily, they have a lot of stuff there. Much hinterland to gather supplies from. But anyway, so Vlad is known for commenting on the situation in Ukraine, what he goes out of his way to describe as Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, just to try to get the facts straight out the gate. And I certainly appreciate that. I would like to ask you, Vlad, I'm a sort of garden variety American center-left person, generally supportive of U.S. support of Ukraine. When I get into a fight, an argument on the internet with an American conservative, and we're arguing about the extent to which Russia was justified in its invasion, when we're arguing about whether the rights of ethnic Russians were being respected in eastern Ukraine prior to the invasion or what have you, what do you reckon we're actually arguing about? Because I don't think we're arguing about Ukraine or Russia or anything. I just don't think we care that much. I mean, we probably should care a lot more than we do, but I don't think we care that much. It's like become a proxy for something, but I don't know what it's a proxy for. Do you?
I think there are lots of proxies,
Nice.
but you're right. Normally these conversations are narcissistic, and they're not just narcissistic in the United States, they're narcissistic all over the West. By narcissistic, I don't mean the people involved in them are narcissists, I just mean it's a kind of cultural...
What is prattling pate? Prattling pate, my beloved. That's like a emote, like an emote. What is that? Where would I even find that? Is that like a book? No. Is it a, oh, it's a tool. Emits a voice. Oh. So that's like for PvP. Twisted clay sculpt in the shape of a human head emits a voice that says, "My beloved." A wistful fetish that imparts voices and words on an eternal journey. Expressions of love are among the most fickle. Okay, that doesn't matter that much to me, but it's interesting. Nothing up there. All right, back to the video.
narcissism, whereby we project our own challenges, our own battles with polarization onto foreign policy issues. I think one of the very biggest problems today is that a lot of people are either losing trust in institutions or feeling like that they don't make sense anymore.
Institutions don't make sense anymore, you mean?
Yeah, that people look out onto politics and what they see is kind of opaque, which is scary. And people feel scared and people feel lost. And that is a worse feeling, actually, than feeling betrayed or disempowered, even though these are terrible feelings to have too as a citizen. Because if you feel betrayed or disempowered, it doesn't necessarily mean you want to give up on the political process in your country. It doesn't mean you want to give up on the very idea of it generating a result in the future which you might accept. But if you're feeling that it's all opaque and that it's like a sports game where 3 or 4 sports are mixed into one and you can't tell what the rules are anymore, then it's tempting to throw eggs and tomatoes at the whole thing and give up. So one of the things that's happening in a lot of these conversations is people saying, I don't trust my institutions to do anything. And I don't trust my institutions to do foreign policy. And if they're doing foreign policy quite aggressively in some part of the world, it must be that something fishy is going on because they are no longer adequate to their task, which is to look after me as a citizen in this damn country.
Nice.
So that's one thing that's going on. But of course, there are many others. But the pattern here is that all of these things we could list would probably be about internal conflicts in American politics that are being projected onto an issue. I don't want to say that's everybody. I think some people do genuinely have a view. But I think the risk is that.
I mean, I think the reason that I want Ukraine to win the war, looking at the conflict as a conflict within a bottle, which of course it's not, and you're always very careful in your talks, Vlad, to emphasize that you think this is not at all, what is going on here is not at all limited to what's going on in eastern Ukraine. But if we were to look at it in its bottle, I think the reason I want Ukraine to win, if I'm really honest with myself, is that I see in Ukraine a bunch of people who are choosing what their approach to modernity is going to be, or post-modernity, however you want to define it. And do they want to go with a Russian model of acting and being and relating to the world and relating to each other, or do they want to go with a Western model of those things? And being a Westerner myself, I naturally think my model is better. On the other hand, I think I have some good reasons for thinking that my model is better, and I think my model's track record, the scoreboard kind of indicates that, the Western way of doing business and doing life seems to be beating out whatever the Russian model of doing business and doing politics and doing life is. So I see Ukraine at a crossroads, and they want to go in the direction of me, but their old daddy is saying, no, you can't move out, you have to stay with me. and I think that that's unfair, and so that's why I think I want Ukraine to win. Not knowing me, Vlad, but knowing a lot about me, do you reckon that's probably what's going on in my head? Or do you think that there's like something else? Is pure partisanship driving me here? Is it just that I'm just kind of an American lefty and the American left supports Ukraine? My team wants that team to win, so rah, rah, rah.
No, I think that it's natural to be outraged when a country wants to be free and it's taken over by destruction and violence. And not just destruction and violence, but destruction and violence that doesn't seem to have much to offer, except just the destruction and the violence.
Well, that's a big boy. I don't think I've fought one this big before. I'd kind of like to see his attacks. I'm going to let him get some hits in. Okay, big smash. Not very original. Let me see what you got. Okay, just a little landmine. Not that bad. Got anything else? Okay, that's fun. Not bad. They're like weeble wobbles. Ouch. Nice. Gosh, I am so excited for Cyberpunk 2077. I want to get done with this game. We've been playing for... Oh, nice. We got the Envoy crown. We've been playing this game for almost a year. And that's my fault. You know, I grind too much, like I was saying earlier. This episode is right up my alley. I don't talk about it very much, but I love politics. I love history. I love philosophy. And I like when Adam gets, you know, close to those topics. And on this one, he's explicitly covering it. So I think it's good. That's what I have to say.
So it's natural to feel outraged, but I think what you're also in some place in your head sticking on top of that response is some idea of what's in it for the United States. I think we have to do that too in the end.
Well, sure.
Otherwise, we will end up with a purely foreign aid picture of the conflict. And then in your conversations and your Twitter fights or whatever we're going to find ourselves in, we're not going to have enough to say if all we have is a humanitarian or foreign aid story there. So I do think you think everything you think, but I also think you have some further thoughts about US foreign policy that you might like or not like. And I think this is hard because what is tricky about this is that a lot of people seem to have taken a hawkish position on the Ukraine war that are against a hawkish US foreign policy normally.
Yeah.
That can be really hard to make sense of.
Right here, this guy, you're looking at him.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a British citizen, but I protested against the Iraq war.
Yeah.
Organized even against the Iraq war. But I think that so we need that story about how it's about us and about our interests, not just a matter of foreign aid. And that story is going to help with all of these quarrels, because the pro-Ukraine argument, the argument that it's worth it to support Ukraine, is in the end going to primarily run through national interest and only secondly run through a humanitarian story.
I mean, Westerners or Americans, United Statesians, we have no adjectival form. We have no demonym. It's terrible. United Statesians who are opposed to U.S. aid to Ukraine, certainly something that's on their mind is just the allocation of resources. They want those monies at home. But that can't be entirely what's going on. Your typical Elon Muscovite, if you will, in the United States, is rooting for Russia, or at least rooting for not total Ukrainian victory for some other reason that strikes me as cultural rather than anything else, and I'm not totally sure I can put my finger on it.
I see several things with Musk, but I see two. The second one in importance is his perception of avoiding nuclear war. And that's an important factor. And in fact, that's the central consideration of your government in this conflict.
As it should be, should it not,
It's
right?
not being talked about in public, but actually much of what's going on behind the scenes will be the avoidance of escalation, and especially nuclear escalation. But above that, for Musk, there is an anti-institutional argument. Musk is an anti-institutionalist who thinks that, in a certain sense, the establishment has failed and basic political institutions can't be trusted anymore. Just what we said a few minutes earlier. And I think that's driving him. The idea that these institutions simply cannot deliver even a morally adequate position on an issue like this because they are too corrupt or too blinded or too self-serving or too detached from the interests of ordinary American voters. So I think that we're back to not just breakdown of trust in institutions, but the exploitation of the breakdown of trust in institutions, which is, of course, a field day for anybody who is in the business of political entrepreneurship. I mean, this is an extraordinary historic level crisis of trust in institutions. Is something marvelous to exploit for people who want to engage in entrepreneurial political activity. Musk is not very well informed about what's going on there. He knows quite a few facts, he has some contacts, but he doesn't have a profound knowledge of the situation. So again, it's driven by domestic political concerns.
Well, there's something about the way Musk and his followers behave generally, but also in this particular area, that is, to me, really similar to how I see the Putin regime behaving, where they're kind of just throwing rocks. Russia can't win this conflict. There's nothing here that ends well for them. What they're doing is just trying to, it's like they're being held down to the ground, and they know that they're not going to be able to resist arrest, but they can maybe punch the cop a few times in the face before they end up going downtown, right? There's something that is kind of reminiscent of, boy, this is extraordinarily loaded, but I mean, purely in terms of tactics, kind of reminiscent of terrorism or any kind of highly asymmetrical warfare, where somebody who kind of probably can't win for whatever reason or another just wants to try to, all they can do is they can make the other side hurt. And if they can make the other side hurt, then that's an end unto itself. Am I sizing up at least the Putin instinct, or the instinct of the what you would call the Z or the Z radicals, who are the more hawkish 10 to 20% of Russians who you reckon are actually kind of pushing Putin more so than the other way around?
I think that you're close. So we're talking about a baby that wants to smash the toys because others won't play with the baby and won't play with the same toys. But there's also the hope that the others can be chased off from the playground eventually. So I think they hope that there is a way for them to win. And I actually think there is, but it's just a distant long shot.
Well, can I qualify that really quickly? Absolutely. I mean, I can see a number of ways for Russia to win the present situation, but as a society, they're in a state of terminal decline, I think. As a society and an economy. Nothing that happens here will save them from their permanent civilizational decline.
I think that's basically right. The civilizational project is too empty to go anywhere. It doesn't have anything to offer even Russians. But it could hold on for 10, 15 years.
Sure.
And what they think, and this is where Musk is not so well initiated into the dynamics in Russia, but what they think is that if enough democratic decline occurs in the West, they could challenge NATO again in 5 or 6 years when they're a little bit more stable and we're a lot weaker. And they don't even have to take all of Ukraine. They could just create a provocation in eastern Estonia, dilute Article 5, the idea that if one NATO state is attacked, then others should come to its military aid. And that way, dilute this Central Western alliance and reconstitute the international order insofar as it ever was an order at all. So that's their plan. And I think that the Maskian story about how to deal with this conflict is more connected with the idea, which is a misrepresentation of this war, that Russia has some national interest in Ukraine and it wants to swallow up a bit of Ukraine. And the reason that the West's reaction has been so strong is that that's understood by enough people not to be the plan. In fact, it's largely not a war about Ukraine for Russia. It's a war about that ultimatum that Russia put on the table before the war, in which they more or less stated that all of Eastern Europe should be not quite theirs, and should be a space which should be recognized as having only countries with toy sovereignties, and over these toy sovereignties, the Kremlin should have some proprietorial control.
Right.
And so once you put that on the table and you exit out of Russia needs to own a bit of Ukrainian territory or half of Ukrainian territory. Once you come out of that kind of thinking, you see a wider pattern of escalation that you can't stop by brokering a deal in Ukraine.
And that is your core argument as to why the United States needs to remain in the fight and the West needs to remain in the fight, that this is bigger than Ukraine. This is part of a broader revanchist Russian project to take back its territory one way or another. And what I want to ask you about that is another popular guy on YouTube talking about such stuff is the geopolitical strategist Peter Zayan, and his point of view, his argument that he makes repeatedly is that Russia's goals, whether it's aware of it or not, are chiefly geopolitical and territorial in nature, that they're trying to secure territory that they can that has topography that they can effectively seal off in order to seal off the territory from invasion. And then the picture that I get from your content, Vlad, is that it's more about Russian prestige. It's more emotional. And that scares the living crap out of me, because fights for prestige is so fungible, right? That like anybody can go. If I say that my goal is to conquer my neighbor's house, that's a very tangible goal, right? I can either do it or not, and I can look over at that high fence in the security system. And I can think, you know what? There's probably no way I'm.
Damn. Lost a bunch of souls. I actually have no idea how many. Probably not too many. I should actually go back and look. How many souls did I just lose? Come on. Show me the soul counter. From when I died early. Gotta kill something to see the soul counter. There it is. 123,127. But that's not exactly where I died. I died right there, 130,000. Okay, that's not that many. Still, it's 130,000 souls. A little bit sad. That's okay. We're learning. We're going to conquer this area. And we're learning about geopolitics, which is fascinating. I'm loving this. Hey, it's kind of interesting that the Halig tree has scarlet rot on it. Why does the Halig tree have scarlet rot? We're so removed from the two sources of rot that I've seen, which are Kalid and the Lake of Rot. So, what's going on with that? I'm sure there's a lore reason.
Going to be able to take that house, and if I do, the cops are just going to come and they're going to kick me back out to my house, right? So therefore, this is a fight that I can't win. I shouldn't really do it, so I'm not going to do it. But if I'm over there trying to get respect from my neighbor, you can place the goalpost wherever you want, man. And therefore, I can see a path to victory in going over to break into my neighbor's house. Because all I want is respect and my prestige in the neighborhood, then I can declare victory. Or I can keep fighting until I've got keep fighting until I reach wherever I choose to place that goalpost. That scares the crap out of me. Do you think that's more what's going on, Vlad?
I think it's closer, yes. So I think there are two stories there to why this war is happening. Partly it's a regime security war, because by prosecuting this war, Putin can consolidate his power at home by various mechanisms that might be too boring to discuss.
Well, very quickly, it would be like appeasing hardliners, which is something we all know about in our own domestic politics. Appeasing hardliners and trying to deal with internal division and within the highest ranks of government. Right?
Sidestepping via this war, dissolution of his perceived legitimacy among the younger generations in particular.
Oh, yeah.
So he felt that without foreign escalation, he couldn't sustain power stably at home for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the Russia experts go when they start explaining this. But then over and above this sits this connected story of an escalation against the West that is about appealing to the West to reconsider.
That just happens so fast, and it's so hard to anticipate.
How it sees Russia's role in the world, and to make a series of the kind of fundamental concessions that the West can't really make. And that is driven by not just emotional, but also, I would say, mystical thinking. And that's particularly worrying, and it seems to me a lot of that got consolidated in Putin's mind during his intense discussions that he had with a couple of people very close to him over the period of the pandemic isolation, when he was largely alone with one or two people with whom he talked about this, who also have terribly radical views. And I think that the difference between what I recommend and what Peter recommends is, first of all, unimportant, because you can't argue with somebody who speaks against the background of such beautiful nature. So if anybody watches Peter Zion's videos, he's our colleague now on YouTube who speaks in the most fantastic natural locations.
As you say, he's a force of nature, reporting from nature.
He's reporting from nature, but where he's absolutely right is this is a wider pattern of escalation. This is where I share with him. Where I depart is that I don't think this is about plugging gaps, plugging geopolitical security worries, or indeed timing the war in such a way as to be sensitive and highly motivated by a demographic crisis in Russia, which is real, but Peter thinks that's the central motivation for the war, that they're not going to be demographically able to prosecute wars like that in the future, so they're doing it now. That seems to me to be not in the minds of the people who've organized all of this.
They seem in denial about their demographic decline.
So this is a regime security war and a mysticism-driven foreign escalation war.
Yeah. Well, all a very sensitive situation. And if you, dear listener, we are talking with Vlad Vexler, one of my favorite YouTubers, and I suppose the extent to which I would never call myself a public intellectual because I don't think I'm smart enough, but like I definitely am borrowing a lot of tools from the public intellectuals toolbox, and that.
So I think Adam is smart enough. I think Adam is a public intellectual, and I'm allowed to say it because I'm not him. But I can understand why he's not allowed to say it.
It is to a great extent your toolbox, Vlad. So I was wondering if we could sort of talk about some of that stuff, how we go about being guys on YouTube who have gathered followings to us of a bunch of people who want to know what we think about almost everything. And for me, that's the most difficult thing because I have some things I know a lot about, a bunch of things I know a little about, and then a lot of things that I know absolutely nothing about. And you are so much better, Vlad, at really any other public intellectual I've ever seen on YouTube, at drawing a line and saying, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that. I'm not your expert. I actually know a lot about that, and I could talk about it and make it say stuff that sounds smart and passable and was good enough. But for the good of the public pool of wisdom, I am going to refrain from answering your question about X, dear viewer. Wow, Vlad. Well, I guess it's not a question. I just wanted to applaud you. You're really good at that, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's lovely of you.
I guess I should have a question at the end of that, but if you would just like to say something in response, go ahead.
The question for us in this is about responsibility and about putting the audience first, but not putting them first in the sense of pandering to what they most immediately want, but putting them first in the sense of offering something that's going to be digestive for them, but in the best sense of that word, not easily absorbed, but something that you can put into someone's body and the next day they're going to feel morally and physically better for having it inside them. And that's very important. And that's much more important to me than informing people, actually. So even in the minutes we've just been talking, there's a small part of me that was infinitesimally uncomfortable with our conversation in a healthy way. And here is why. Because, of course, we were representing the views of, let us say, half of the population of your society or of my society.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I emphasize so much is how scary it is for citizens to feel that they can't engage in conflict effectively. And the solution to not being able to engage in conflict effectively for a lot of citizens is to engage in it even less effectively. And so one of the things I think is very important is that everybody is included in your audience, but also if it's a conversation that's remotely political, they have to have a sense that everybody in their society is also kind of included. And sometimes that might come from a place of respect and love, but sometimes it might come from a place of wanting to throw up, but engaging nevertheless, smiling nevertheless, out of a recognition that we would love to live in a world in which we can choose who shares the table of politics with us. But that can't really be done unless we secede or emigrate. But we're stuck with our fellow citizens and they're stuck with us.
Indeed. This is something I wish I could tell folks on the American left. And it's something I think to myself, having grown up in the Northeast and then lived most of my professional life now in the South. People up there, the way they talk about half of their fellow citizens, it's like, what are you proposing? Are you proposing to kill them all? Are you just proposing to genocide like half the country? Because if not, then the way you're talking is completely unproductive. And it may be true. It may be your truth, but anyone who thinks that because something is true, that's a good reason to say it, has never been in a successful long-term relationship. There's all kinds of things that are true, or that you feel are true, personal truths, that do not need to be voiced at all times, because nothing good comes of it. I just wish I could shake a lot of people I used to live near and tell them that.
And this is not a moral principle in the first instance. It's a principle about being an effective citizen.
Well, it's a moral principle against genociding, the half your civilization that you don't agree with.
For sure.
I'm morally opposed to that. So in the absence of that option, what are we going to do instead? Well, now we have to have pragmatic positions like be polite, shut up, listen. Even when you think the other person is categorically wrong, shut up and listen some more.
And of course, the effectiveness point here comes in when you realize that fostering certain kinds of polarization is not in every case, but in most cases going to fail to get you closer to the outcome you yourself want. So an idea of a public good that we're appealing to, or a sense of solidarity we all share that we're appealing to. It's not just a moral principle, it's actually an effective way of getting outcomes that you want. And I am not, because I live with a health challenge and only work a limited number of hours a day, I'm not attached to university, but one of my biggest worries about universities over the last 10 years is that they're not doing as good a job as they used to at particularly the undergraduate level, at bringing out people into the world who are able to engage with people who viscerally disagree with them in a constructive way, a way that gets them results and a way that persuades. Even if you don't persuade your opponent in the argument, you could persuade some people who are on the sidelines and watching what's going on. And so this business of being good at conflicting, right? And that means recognizing that your opponents aren't enemies, that a relation of political opposition is kind of a relation of cooperation on some level too. That is very, very important. Where it gets hard is if your political opponents are themselves refusing to see you as opponents and are only seeing you as enemies. What do you do then? That is a hard question, and it requires to sort of take time and explore, because people are facing it in their societies too.
Well, it seems to me a big driver of the polarization that we're talking about, which is of course not at all limited to the United States, is information ecosystem siloing. Before we used to have fights about values. Now we have fights about facts, and that strikes me as really scary and unproductive. Fights about values. What should we do in light of the given facts? That's what politics is. I can't think of a better use of political venues. But fighting about just the basic facts of what is happening, it's terrifying. And whenever I think too much about whether or not I actually know the things I think I know, I think I go into an epistemological crisis, and I figure, I'll just watch a Vlad Vexler video in my left ear while I go to sleep. But this is, the reason why I bring this up is because I think that you are helping that problem in your own little way by not polluting the pool of believed facts, with things that really are not fit to print. And I admire that about you so much, and I've tried to do it myself. But on the other hand, I recognize that when my audience asks me questions about everything, every political issue, every, pizza topping, they want Adam's take on everything. And I don't give it, because I have my inner Vlad talking to me, saying only talk about things, only voice earned opinions, right? But on the other hand, I know why they do that, because it's what I want. When I have a person, a public intellectual who I've spent some time with, I want to know what they think about everything. And I think I recently figured out the reason why. I think it's because it's because that public intellectual becomes like a benchmark, or like a barometer, or just some kind of fixed position against which you can judge other distances, right? If I know that Peter Zion is generally, pro this issue, and some other controversial political issue comes up, I want to know what he thinks about that one, because I will be able to assess all of the positions on that issue better, because I'll know where that one, whatever he says, I'll know where it is in relation to this other position that he has. And since I have this history with him, I have this trail of positions that Peter has, it gives me something to compare to. And that strikes me as like a really legitimate desire, legitimate impulse, and it makes me want to answer every single question my audience asks. I'm done talking now, if you would like to say something smarter.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference how you say what you say, right? And what you think you are doing when you say it. So there is one part of it where, let's say, an academic with a speciality is talking about their speciality. There's another thing where a well-informed cultural commentator is talking about the same thing. There's a difference. There isn't a world of difference, but there's a difference. And then there is a situation where an activist is talking about something. An activist who may be not just an activist for a good cause, but a constructive activist for a good cause. But nevertheless, what they want is for us to get closer to where they want us to land.
Right. When I give my take on something, I'm trying to kind of give people an introduction into this issue and show them the various sort of angles of it that I'm familiar with so that they can understand it for themselves and come to their own conclusion. Whereas an activist is explicitly speaking with the intent of persuading toward some kind of particular goal. Right.
The paradigm of activism is that change comes before truth, even if truth matters a lot.
Ugh.
The paradigm
That's pretty
of
dismal.
the non-activist
God,
is
do you believe that? That seems, if that's true, that's a fatal flaw of activism, right? Like, activism is inherently tainted if that's true.
I believe that activism is impeccable in principle. If your outcome is good and what you're doing gets us closer to it, and you get us there without irresponsible lies, that's fine. But there is a difference here that you can never bridge between expertise and activism, because expertise is always prepared to take a step in a direction that gets you further away from a good outcome, potentially. And one of the biggest things that's just in my private conversations with Ukraine, Russia experts, that they've struggled with this, because they support Ukraine in their heart, but not everything they think aligns with where their heart wants to go. And so a lot of folks have felt that kind of challenge, but it's a perennial challenge for us. But I don't think I don't think I want you to, with both feet, land on that conclusion that activism is inherently suspicious because change and truth conflict within it, even if it's done well. I think that conflict can be managed responsibly or irresponsibly, you know?
Right.
And I'm not saying activists can't be truthful, but I'm saying that transformation is something that would typically take a special kind of priority. It's just not going to get with an expert. What I like to do with the kind of dilemma you are putting on the table, you know, what do I say? What do I not say? How far do I go giving my 743 opinions on everything in the universe?
Which, of course, it should be said, you and I both have every economic incentive to do. And
we have an unbelievable economic incentive to do that, and also a great incentive to not have conversations like this because they don't pay off on this platform, you know. But and that's why I've been a big admirer of your long form content in the last few months, because it's actually brave. On top of that, the other thing, dear listeners, is I think Adam is a beautiful writer, and so it's marvelous to listen to him for 45 minutes.
It's only because I'm not a very good talker. Like, you're so good. You're so you're so quick, man, and I'm just not quick. That's why I have to write.
Yeah, two things I listened to. I think recently I particularly enjoyed the Ramsey one and the Marco Pierre White one in particular.
How very British of you.
What I love to emphasize is actually not getting the facts completely right, or even getting your evaluation looking decent from every perspective, but having the right approach. And for me, the right approach has two bits in it. One is sincerity, but the other is accuracy. And what really matters here are these things as virtues. That means, are you trying enough to be sincere? That's to say, it's not that you can try to be sincere, but are you checking yourself, checking that some microscopic inner bullshitter inside you hasn't taken up a bigger amount of space than they should? So sincerity matters. But the other thing that matters is accuracy. And by accuracy, I don't mean getting things right. I mean going out of your way to try to get them right. Yeah. I think too many people panic too much about making a mistake. What I actually think matters is being tethered in this way to what we might call the virtue of truthfulness, which consists of trying to be sincere as best you can, trying to make sure you're not BSing. Hopefully you don't need to try too hard on that, but then also with accuracy, trying really, really hard. Being sincere, being accurate, aspirationally, I think, gives you a clean bill of health for the long term, because we need to judge people like you, in my opinion, over a stretch of decades. It might be that you mess up a couple of times in one particular year, you speak in a way you shouldn't about some issue, you realize you should have known more about it. That doesn't matter. What matters is there going to be a disproportionate presence of these kinds of wobbles over a course of 30 years? And moreover, where is the trend going to be? Is the trend going to be neutral? You're going to maintain the same level of sincerity and accuracy? Is it going to go downward where it goes with 95% of public commentators on YouTube because they experience a degree of algorithmic and audience capture? Or is it even going to go up over time? You know? And one of the tips that you understand so well, but I think particularly less experienced creators, I think, struggle with, is that it helps so much to have your imagination and your thought off YouTube if you're sharing on this platform. That's to say, don't think or analyze or explore to make content. That is not a good idea at all. So, you know, if I listen to you, what I want to do is have...
Well, I think we cleared the whole area. Oh wait, one more enemy. Just a little flower out on the end of a branch. Now we cleared the whole area. That's satisfying. And by the whole area, I mean everything up until the bottleneck. Where we died before, because there are so many envoys that are going to spit bubbles at us. So let's see how that plays out. So that guy, that big guy, he can really attack from range. Okay, here they come, and roll through it. Oh, okay. Well, I blocked it. And roll. Nice. Wow, there's a lot of these scarlet rot traps. I think we made it. What's all this? Is there a bonfire? I would really like that if there were. I feel like we've earned it. Yes. Got one. Alright. Well, I'm going to go back up and see if there's anything else. And yeah, back to the show.
An experience where I know you've gone off and thought about things, and then you've come on your platform and you're talking about them. But I don't want that link to be so direct that there's no space between the two at all. And that is why some professional academics actually sometimes do okay on YouTube, because the cost of BSing professionally to them off YouTube will be so great. Yeah. And in that way, sometimes, even without perfect intent, vanity can drive people toward truthfulness, strangely enough.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Well, I find that your particular brand of public intellectualism is impeccable, and it really feeds me. Vlad, what should we talk about now? Should we talk about music? We're both classical music people. Are you... I sort of still consider myself a failed composer. Are you like living your fallback career right now as I kind of am?
No, because I am trying to bring it about that I bridge everything eventually. So I'm talking about two things in public at the moment, which is Western citizens being terrified about the state of their democracies and the Ukraine war. And I plan to add 2 or 3 other little things. One of them, of course, is something that's closer to professional philosophy, and beginning to do that on a microscopic channel, little by little. And I'm going to add music. I have a contentless channel called Vlad Wexler Music, and we're gonna have probably, health allowing, a set of very small chats there about particular pieces, how to begin sort of getting inside them. That'll come eventually. I mean, one of the questions that I'm fascinated by, I don't know what your relationship is with this, but certainly in the classical music world, one way to tell the difference between somebody who is a musician psychologically versus somebody who just loves music very much. And I don't want to judge. There are people who love music very much who are way more musically gifted than people who are musicians. So it doesn't matter
Sure, yeah.
how it goes. But for me, in the classical music realm, what makes one a musician, and this is really an important point actually, is whether one engages with the pieces via recordings of them, or whether one engages with the pieces, if you like, more directly. So I'll give you an example. Imagine an amazing music producer who is in the recording studio spending 30 minutes discussing how to weigh a chord with a pianist and saying that there's just too little weight in the pinky at the moment and something else is off balance. If they have a musical education, but they do not play regularly, that they can talk about that chord for 30 minutes, that they can talk about what they think that score is trying to get the pianist to do, for me indicates that they think like a musician. Whereas the music lover would say, well, I know 17 recordings of this piece and that's how that chord sounds there, and maybe I prefer that one over this one. So for me, this idea of when you have music in your head, that is not particular performances of the piece, but your own manipulation of the piece as it has never yet been performed, right? That suggests you're in trouble and you have the psychology of a musician rather than somebody who loves music. So that's one distinction I make. Over to you. What do you think about what I've said? And
Wow.
what does it make you think?
Well, I thought I got scared when you started on that riff, because I thought that you were going to say that I can tell that you're a real musician if you engage the piece by looking at the score rather than listening to a recording, which of course would be tremendously I feel like the term ableist gets thrown around too much, but I think this might actually be like an appropriate use for it, because there's lots of people who make that argument. And as someone who's horribly dyslexic, and the main reason I had trouble in the classical music world was that I just can't read very well. That's always been a problem. Though, quick plug, all of the people on YouTube doing auto page turning presentations of classical pieces where you can watch the score and it will turn in real time as you listen. Wow, thank you for your service. Thank you for doing that. And those things are just a blast for me to watch. But anywho, I think what I hear you saying is that maybe I could fancy myself a real musician regardless of what I'm doing for a living if the way I engage with music is through having the urge to interpret or create rather than just to bask in it. That when I listen to pieces of music, what I'm usually doing in my head is either rewriting them, saying, not that, I think probably should have done that, or I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so much better than anything I could ever think of, and what could I steal from this? How could I just get a whiff of a soupçon of this in whatever poor gruel I'm able to prepare, right? And in that sense, I think I do feel like I'm a musician still, even though I haven't written anything to completion in quite some time. But that's the way I engage with music, and therefore I feel that I am a musician and always will be. On the other hand, gosh, being out of the game and not having my self-worth, or my career prospects or anything tied to it, and then leaving especially classical music behind for some time and now coming back to it, wow, I'm enjoying it so much more than I ever have before. I'm relaxing so much more. I'm not stressing out and kind of measuring myself against whatever it is, performance or composition wise. And it's just a delight. And I hope, have you gotten to that point in your life? Because it's delightful for me.
No, it's really demanding and stressful, and I have to feel quite physically well to engage with it. I listen with full concentration when I listen to music or when I read a score, so it's much easier for me to speak live on YouTube than to listen to a piece of music, interestingly.
Wow.
So it's a demanding physical experience, and because of my health issue, I want to pick the best moments to do it. And I want to build a life where I have the space for that, which means, eventually finding ways to outsource some of these things, all these conversations that are being had on YouTube, in terms of the stuff that needs to be done behind the scenes. So eventually that's where I'm going. I have done very, very little, really. But the last thing I did on music was I gave a conference paper on one of the variations from Beethoven's Diabelli variations, which is a funny piece. It's a piece that is all about mocking us humans for how absurd we are, but mocking us lovingly. And that's one of the most extraordinary things about late Beethoven, that he never achieved in his personal life, because he was a disaster in his personal life. But in his work, he managed to combine tenderness with outrageous mockery of our absurd limitations, and that's something that he brought out in the probably the very greatest piano piece he wrote. It's a very long work. It takes over 50 minutes to get through it. But I completely agree with you. The only thing that I'm really horribly pedantic about is that when we look at scores, I don't see that as a creative process as much as a recreative interpretive process. So there's a wonderful, many ways very flawed, but wonderful pianist from the first half of the 20th century, Arthur Schnabel, and he used to talk about all of these pieces by saying that they were greater than they can be played. And what he meant by that isn't so much that the piece underdetermines performance, which we know is true, you can play something correctly but in 17 different ways, but it overdetermines performance. That you look at the score and you're saying, what am I going to do? Because he is genuinely asking me to do 7 things, 4 of which are incompatible.
Yeah.
Where am I going to go? And so back to musician, non-musician distinction, the musician is going to walk around with their own solutions to these incompatible demands, and you're gonna, do these 2 and then that one, and then does that work? And then on we go. Whereas the lover of music will outsource that process to somebody who plays it for them. But I just want to make the non-elitist point that you I think heard in what I said, even though I wasn't clear about it, that there is such a thing as being a good musician and a bad musician, which is why somebody who is a lover of music can be probably in a more marvelous and deep relationship with all of these things that Beethoven and Mozart left for us than somebody who is a professional musician. This man that I'm very slowly writing a book about, the public intellectual Isaiah Berlin, loved music probably more than he even loved ideas, actually. But he wasn't musically trained. He had so many close friends in the musical world. He had a deep knowledge of certain pieces as memories of different renditions of them. And it's like his relationship with music is probably deeper than so many musicians. So that's kind of how I divide all of that up.
Yeah. It's funny, I was listening to you talk about Beethoven's mockery but with love, mockery but with warmth. Is that a common thread that runs through what you're interested in and also what you create? Love, warmth, fuzziness. You find the kindest way to say almost everything, and it's clearly with much effort and intent. And I have tried to aspire to that, but I'm not as warm and fuzzy as you are good at performing and may indeed really be in real life.
I am 2 things. I am viscerally critical of people in a way that can seem dislikable at first, but I don't very easily jump from being critical of someone to disliking them. So I'm somebody who loves humans as they are, not as they should be. And I think that makes it easier for me. That when I'm presented with other humans who are in a very different space to where I am or where I might imagine they could be, I do not have an instinct to start pulling them over. I have an instinct of making certain things available to them and doing that in an intentional way. That's say not chucking stuff at them, but back to that digestive thing we said earlier. And I want to see where that goes. But I am brutal, and I am even brutal on some people who watch my stuff. But I believe that even that brutality has to be part of a ritual and the process. And that means that we're not just here having debates, we're not just here arguing for and against stuff. We are, this is a stretch, of course, because we're doing this online, but we are coming together into some kind of room, some kind of space, and we're kind of having a cup of tea there. And that, over and over and over and over again, that I find is what I find is a precondition for even beginning to put somebody in a position where they might look at something differently, or want to even, question something. And then, because I see being in this public intellectual business as a little bit wearing a different hat. For me, that hat is different because you start with the audience rather than with the ideas. You start with the audience, and then the ideas come in, but they are couched according to what the audience feels, what they're scared of, what they're concerned about, also what you feel is going to be of use to them, even if they don't feel that necessarily to start with. So it's this business of putting the audience first. There's a beautiful man on YouTube called Brian McGee, with whom I had many arguments about this. But he was a passionate believer in the idea that there is no such thing as a public intellectual, because if you're a good enough intellectual, you should be able to explain the most interesting things about your ideas to the general public. And if you can't, you don't understand them well enough yourself.
That's foolish. That is foolish. So many brilliant people who are awful communicators. If we expected all brilliant people to be good communicators, we would have no smart people in important positions of power.
That's true. But what he thought that I have so much sympathy for, but don't entirely share, is that you can be an intellectual, and if you happen to be good at what we're doing, then you can go out there and, without putting a different hat on, carry on doing the same thing, only now you're speaking to the general public. Whereas I think you need a change, for me at least. You need to put on a different hat, and the key difference there is that the audience comes first. In a kind of sort of awful analogy, because I don't have one ready to hand, I could say this. If I'm interacting with philosophers, professional philosophers, and I'm sharing some ideas, I'm basically offering a 7-course meal, and my expectation is that they will have it in the right order. They will also have it with the wine pairings I propose, and they'll have it sitting in the right place on my time. And after that, they can smash it, they can criticize it, but they're going to go through the process. That is completely undoable, the general public. Where the general public is, hi, what are you feeling? We have a lot of food here. You're welcome to grab something, have it in, have it out. We're not going to compromise what we do with the food, but we're not going to sit you down, dress you up, tell you got to have these 7 things, go through them in this particular order. So for me, it's that difference. And so, in a certain sense, it starts with the audience first. And I think it's something that a lot of people on this platform who've been successful actually do end up learning. Like, what you are doing is utterly impossible without deep empathy for what happens to a human when they click on your video and watch the first 30 seconds or a minute. You are deeply empathetic to what their needs are, to what they might be feeling, to what their expectations might be. So that's how I see that difference between, if you like, the intellectual and the public intellectual world. The the people you're engaging with come first.
Well, let's put the people first, and even though we'd like to talk probably all night, let's go ahead and end this here, I think. You landed the ship on a dining metaphor. I really appreciate that. Really completed my arc for me. Vlad Vexler is on YouTube at your main channel is just your name, which I imagine is probably where you'd probably recommend people start if they want to become a Vlad Vexler completist. The next place to go is probably the Vlad Vexler chat channel, which I think if you enjoyed this conversation, that's where you get to see Vlad be who you have heard him be for the last hour, and it's where I spend most of my time with your content is on the chat channel. And I loved spending this time with you now, Vlad. Thank you. You're the best. All right, I'm going to do my thing where I say to the audience, I say, hey, make good choices. Talk to you next time.
Well, that was a fantastic podcast, and a little bit of a disappointing end to the gaming stream. We lost all the souls that we got from clearing that place multiple times because of the misbegotten warrior. I didn't think he could jump over that gap, and he took me completely by surprise. I thought maybe I could run away, but then he used his roar to stun me, and I lost all my souls. And that's fine. We learned a lot, and it wasn't even that many. It was like half a level. I could make that in 20 minutes from farming. And maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Anyway, this has been just a lovely, relaxing, brief end to a busy day. And so thank you for being here. And I'll try to stream again tomorrow. I'm going to try to do more frequent, shorter streams, probably more focused on gaming, since I'm going to be very busy on the programming side, doing other projects that I can't put on stream. But I'm definitely looking forward to continuing to program Wigli and all of the wonderful projects that we have in the pipeline. So thanks for watching. And like Adam said, make good choices. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Sloppy.